Hey everyone, and welcome to Building SaaS on AWS. May the 4th be with you all. My name is Gunnar Grosch. I'm a developer advocate here at AWS, and if you're building or planning to build a SaaS product, this is the show for you. What we do on this show is we deep dive into SaaS-specific topics so you can learn more about just that, building SaaS on AWS. And every other week, I bring on exciting guests to dive deep into some SaaS-specific topics. And this week, of course, is no different. This week, I'm joined by Chris Struttmann from ALTR and my colleague, David Roberts, here from AWS. So welcome to the show, the both of you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We always start off with a quick round of introductions, of course. So Chris, tell people who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Struttmann. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for ALTR. I'm also one of the founders here at ALTR. The company was founded in 2014, and I'm excited to show you some of the things we've done on AWS.
Great to have you here, Chris. David?
Hi there, David Roberts. I'm a startup solutions architect at AWS. I've been working with a number of SaaS customers, including ALTR.
And welcome you as well. Oh, and if you've seen this show before, you all know what it's about. But if it's the first time, well, expect some very technical stuff throughout this hour. And we want to make it interactive. So if you have any questions, any comments, just post them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer those throughout the hour. And to begin with, in the chat, please let us know where you're watching the show from to kick things off. So on this specific episode, we're going to talk about building free data control and protection using ALTR. So diving deep into that with the help of Chris and David. So maybe to start things off, maybe you should set the stage by talking a bit about what ALTR is, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. ALTR is a company which provides the ability to control and protect your data. And a lot of kind of the free product, as you mentioned, is centered around cloud data warehouses. So Snowflake, other cloud data warehouses like AWS's Redshift, they really represent kind of a target market for us as companies move sensitive data into the cloud en masse.
That's great. And I know ALTR isn't just you, Chris. So
correct.
Tell us a bit about the ALTR team.
Correct. I'm here, and we're going to talk about our solution here in a few minutes. But I'm here, and we have about 30 engineers in the state of Florida. Got a little picture of them up on screen if you want to share it. I'm here to tell you guys about the work that they've done. I'm really just giving their voice or their work a voice today.
There we go. Shout out to the ALTR engineering team.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So, well, continue that ALTR story, please, Chris. Let us know about, well, the switch to a product-led offering. How is that different from what you were doing?
Right. So as I mentioned, the company was founded a number of years ago, and we brought the product to market in 2018. We had some really kind of extremely innovative use cases and technologies that could be deployed on-prem, even though the solution was SaaS. What we noticed as customers started to kind of move, as I mentioned, that data to the cloud en masse, was there was not really a need, and there wasn't really a great fit for those on-prem components anymore. So we kind of engineered this, what we call cloud to cloud or cloud native offering. You know, we're a cloud product. We're born in the cloud. We've been developing our product on AWS since day one. And then, you know, the customers also now have their data in the cloud. So how can we make a product that allows us to bridge that gap and really offer kind of a seamless, low touch kind of an install? There's also kind of a business component to this as well. We wanted to create a free product that people could get value out of. It's free forever. We had to create a product where the economics made sense for that, and the costs were going to be, you know, very maintainable. It would not make sense for us to build a product where cost scales linearly as users increase linearly. because we're offering this to a number of customers for free. And so we really needed to leverage a lot of technologies, a lot of the newer technologies, to be able to make that work from an economic and a business perspective as well.
So to be able to make that a free and product-led product, what were some of the requirements that were generated by that?
Right. So one of the things was we had to have, effectively the customer had to be able to self-service, right? So we're partners with Snowflake, as I mentioned. You can actually, if you're a Snowflake customer, go into the Snowflake product, go into a feature that they have called Partner Connect and hit the ALTR button, and you can become an ALTR free customer immediately right there. So that was one thing. But also the install had to be zero touch. We really needed the ability to give the user a really, really good experience without having to have them go through an install. So what you're going to see is a product that enables the customer to control their data protection in a very, very simple UI, which I've got on screen now, but really masks away all of the complexities of all of that cloud to cloud kind of interconnectivity.
Right. So that, say, autonomy for the customer, having that self-service is really one of the keys to being able to make that free option available for customers.
Correct. The customer should be able to use the product without ever talking to anybody.
Right. So let's then move into talking about the architecture of the ALTR product.
Sure.
So what drove the architecture that you have today?
Right. Well, as I mentioned before, I'm just going to go ahead and switch over here to my reference architecture slide. What I mentioned was, the economics had to make sense at steady state. It could not cost a lot of money to operate. And as customers got onboarded, we couldn't incur new cost for new customers to operate at steady state. And so really the answer to that is a lot of the newer kind of serverless architectures. And so one of the things you'll see, or one of the things you can notice here on the screen is heavy use of technologies like AWS Lambda. Lambdas offer you the ability to scale really without ever having to think about it. Nobody's going to lose sleep at night because their Lambdas are scaling automatically. But also it's the ability to, control costs and operate a service that is very, very, very cost efficient. So you'll note that almost all of these technologies here, in fact, I would say all of these technologies on the screen here, these are all serverless technologies.
Right. David, do you want to jump in perhaps and tell a bit about the AWS side of the architecture?
Sure. Yeah. So, like Chris said, they wanted to be able to onboard new customers, and they can't have this steady state cost for a customer who might try something and then maybe not use it for a while. There's a lot of spiky usage here as far as like when a customer is onboarding or doing some activity. So it was really important that they just pay for what they actually need and not the steady state. So all of the services used in this architecture were specifically chosen for that. API Gateway scales very well. It's pay per request. Lambda, obviously, is kind of the canonical example where you're paying for exactly what you use, and it's scaling automatically. And then it's the same with DynamoDB. And there you have some choices, but it supports an on-demand mode where you can pay, if you have a large spike with thousands of requests, within a second, you can pay for that. And then if it's not used for the next hour, then that's totally okay.
That's cool. So I'm always interested in hearing these stories of how architectures evolve. But so, Chris, is this how you started out, or is this basically where you are at now?
No, so that's a great question. Referring back to this slide here, ALTR started out as this box down here. What we call our cloud integration is an extension of our already existing technology. Our existing technology is extremely good at identifying who's accessing data, how much data they're accessing, and then enforcing all sorts of policy around kind of those parameters. So what we wanted to do, and that technology is very applicable in a lot of the transactional workloads where you've got, just single transactions going across a wire to maybe an operational data store, a SQL Server, or MySQL, or something like that. What we wanted to do was we wanted to extend that already built product, that investment, into this kind of cloud integration model. And so, looking at the different workloads, more analytical style workloads, along with the way that people use products like Snowflake and Redshift differently than the way that they use the transactional databases, really informed this design.
And talking about that, then, were there any technical? Well, there always are, but were there some technical challenges while building this for you?
Yeah. So, being that, again, that those are all cloud products, tying them together, it seems relatively easy. It's like, oh, cloud over here, we'll just put them together. I'm sure there's a REST API. And while for a lot of times that's very applicable here, there's a lot of nuance. We're dealing with data, and a lot of times we're dealing with very important data, which is why it has to be protected and controlled in the first place. And so we really, we had to look really critically at our integration options with those data warehouses. I was happy to kind of be fortunate enough to sit on a product session with some of the Redshift team the other day and get a little preview into some of the things that they're developing. And those integrations, they all have little nuances that we had to kind of work around, and those also drove this architecture that you see on the screen here.
Great. So can we perhaps then, well, I think we're 12 minutes into the show. I think it's time to maybe pull up some examples for us to look at. Should we perhaps switch over to?
Sure.
Let's see. Let's bring up your screen share again, Chris.
Yep. I'm just rearranging my demo here.
No worries.
And we'll.
And in the meantime, this is Building SaaS on AWS. I'm joined by Chris from ALTR today and my colleague David from AWS. And we're looking at ALTR and how they are building on AWS.
Yep. So let me go ahead and frame the demo here a little bit. What I've done is I've taken a lot of the concepts, the conceptual kind of value that ALTR provides, and I've taken the kind of the product out of it. I've made just some very simple building blocks using a lot of AWS tools and kind of Snowflake, different types of Snowflake integrations. And what you're going to see here is, very simply, when I use one role, again. Very simple demo. When I use one role, I don't get data. When I use a different role, I'm able to access data, right? And so that's the very simple value that ALTR provides, and you get it through that beautiful console that I showed before. But what's actually happening here? Snowflake has the ability to integrate with us in a way that we actually get to see every single query. When we see that query, we get an immense amount of information with that query. So I've kind of taken one of these requests here. I've got this again. This isn't a simple Lambda within your product, and there's a couple of Snowflake resources that will attach to this. But what we get here is we just get an immense amount of information about the query and what happened during that query. So we use this information. We'll refer back to that technical architecture diagram in a second. We use this information to make decisions about whether or not people should access to data. One of the differentiators about our product is it's not just who can access data, it's also how much data they access. And so we're able to look at all of this information, again, make that determination. But getting back to some of those technical nuances, we get all of this information And because of the way some of the integrations work, we're not necessarily getting this information just one time. We could be getting this information multiple times. If Snowflake's scaling up a warehouse or something like that, they need to call back out to ALTR. That happens occasionally, but we're kind of in a way in an accounting business, right? We have to account for when people access data and how much they ask for. So we have to, be able to differentiate and delineate between, is this a new query? Is this not a new query? And so as I flip back to the architecture here, that's really how, when we leverage DynamoDB and this kind of unique architecture that we have here, we have all of these satellite services. These boxes over here. This is what ALTR does. This is what we're good at. And they provide really the unique things that ALTR is able to do. But the infrastructure just to get the data there and to kind of clean the data is all over here. And we use DynamoDB to effectively deduplicate the data, and then using a change stream handler, distribute the data out to all of the relevant ALTR services, which use our technology to make decisions on whether or not data access should be granted.
So, David, perhaps can you add some more context about the AWS architecture side of things?
So, yeah. So when these requests come in, what happens is that obviously there's the Lambda function that inserts it into DynamoDB. And Chris, I believe what you're doing is almost like an upsort operation where you're taking some ID from the Snowflake side, figuring out, let's write this to DynamoDB. If it's something that's brand new, it gets added there. If it's something that is not new, you can kind of merge in the state there. And based on that, now you can have a single record in DynamoDB with the current state. And then what happens on the right is DynamoDB supports something called a change stream handler. From there, you can send any updates that happen in DynamoDB very quickly to other services. That could be a Lambda function, like in this case, that could be using Amazon Kinesis. But what you get is this change stream of every single record. Is this a new inserted record, or is this updating an existing record? So what's happening there is, based on that, a Lambda function is triggered. And from there, it can decide, based on each customer's use case, what needs to happen next. It might be one thing if this is a brand new record that's just being inserted, or if some existing data is being updated, it might need to take a different path.
And who is the typical customer here, Chris? Using your solution?
So yeah, it's people who work in the data space, data security. They're able to log into the product and create and enforce their policy almost instantly. Also, one of the other interesting things that we have about our product is we have an open API, which is accessible by anything. It's a very simple REST API. Almost everything you can do in our product, in that portal that I showed you earlier, that very nice portal, is completely automatable. So there's a lot of integrations with other kind of people and products in the data space.
So, and I know from looking at information, reading about ALTR, that you talk a bit about, or quite a lot about, cloud to cloud or cloud native data security. Tell us a bit about that, Chris.
Right. So yeah, as I mentioned, the cloud to cloud thing continues to be really, really an important focus to us. Not only because of the product experience, as I mentioned, you can just click the button and you become an ALTR customer and the data is added. We actually just launched a really nice workflow for onboarding new customers so they can get their data into ALTR even easier. But really, it's a method of thinking about where the data is going to live and how to secure it, and the whole data ecosystem is going to have to be, aware of what's going to be enforced on their data from a policy perspective.
Right. So well, looking at these, the way that you're delivering your solution as a SaaS product, given the show we're on, tell us a bit about how you made the decision to actually start delivering the service as a SaaS solution.
Right. So SaaS is kind of a requirement for all parts of our business. Leveraging economies of scale is something that we, as founders of the company, identified really early on. Is really, and this is 2014, 2015ish, somewhere around there. It's really the way the world is going to need to go. We ship one product and one product only. The customers obviously have various configurations of the product depending on the use case. But at the end of the day, we ship the one product. AWS is what allows us to leverage the economies of scale to make our business model work the way that it does. And we're very fortunate to have David kind of help us, leverage and realize the maximum potential of that technology choice. It really, it would not be tenable for us to stand up dedicated infrastructure for every new customer. Some of our competitors and other companies in the data space do that. It degrades the user experience from the first perspective, but also it really demolishes the ability to leverage the economies of scale. And so when we think about how much our service is costing versus the value that it's producing for the number of people that it's producing that value for, the shape of the graph is far different than if we were not able to leverage SaaS as a differentiator.
Right, and I guess that leads us into the typical SaaS topic on these shows, which is the delivery model. If it's siloed or if it's a pooled model, and do I take that what you just said as that your solution is delivered as in the pool model, so all users are sharing the resources?
I would say yes, but also as you get into more advanced product offerings that we have, there's the ability to split out workloads on a per customer basis. Early on, dealing as a founder of the company, we have these kind of unique experiences. Talking with some CIOs, it would not be acceptable for a bank to have data in ALTR and have it resident right next to another bank's data. And so for some use cases and some workloads, there just has to be really strong partitioning, but we're still able through the use of, again, it's kind of all in this green bubble down here. We're able to keep that data really partitioned, but still in a SaaS deployment.
So is that, well, can you compare this to the architecture of the rest of your product then? What those workloads are like? Right.
So our platform is really mission critical in a lot of settings. Oftentimes, I'm going to stop sharing my screen if you don't mind. A lot of times what happens is, we're in between a bank and a user trying to get access to their data, or we're in a transaction flow for a credit card swipe. And the bank is asking ALTR, is this credit card, or is this token representative of a credit card that I have? And is that credit card still accessible? Things like that. And so the mission criticality of what we do here is really extremely high and potentially unmatched given some of the other kind of analytical type players in the data space. And so what you see in that green bubble in the bottom right of the screen is that's representative of a mission critical architecture that gives transactional guarantees, things like determinism for tokens. We sit again, going back to some of the other customer use cases, they're a little bit more operational. Those operational databases have, consistency guarantees and atomicity guarantees and things like that. We have to be able to match those with the rest of our products. So some of the other parts of the product are deployed with containers. We make a lot of use of queues, and we have explicit kind of policies and practices around things like retry logic. So we have to be able to give a lot of really transactional guarantees around what we do here. Additionally, we have availability guarantees. As a product, we just launched ALTR High Availability. So we're happily deployed in 2 regions now. That's really helping our business a lot, again, especially for those customers in financial services where it wasn't going to be acceptable to be domiciled in one region. There was a little bit of a push for that towards the end of last year, and we had kind of had it on our roadmap anyways. But being able to be in those two regions to just increase those guarantees and again leverage or be able to deliver an availability model that made sense for our customers was really important.
So are all customers then split across regions, or is that a choice from the customer?
No, again, going back to the we ship one product, we're a small team. We've got about 30 engineers working on the product. So we really need to, whenever we develop a feature, we need to make it part of the mainline product. If we start having kind of, nuanced features that are only accessible to certain customers, it creates a wide array of different configurations of the product, which is, as I'm sure you and many of your viewers know, creates a lot of testing and quality assurance. Again, being the small team, we can't afford to do things like that. And so the way we combat that is we say, this is our product. When we want to do something like be able to increase our availability guarantees, we need to make it in such a way that it makes sense for us to build it, and it makes sense for us to build it for all of our customers.
That's great. All right, everyone, this is Building SaaS on AWS. If you just joined us, I am joined today by Chris Struttmann from ALTR and David Roberts, my colleague from AWS, talking about ALTR, their product, and how they are building SaaS on AWS. So, David, can you perhaps talk a bit more about how you're working with ALTR and how you're helping them build this product on AWS?
So ALTR has a great team of extremely smart engineers. So it's sometimes challenging to work with them, but they always come to me with really great questions that I don't usually have the answers for them right away. So they usually come to me with like some very complex problem. They've already read the documents. They know exactly what they're trying to do. So it's usually kind of a lot of back and forth. I try to get to, okay, make sure I understand their use case, what options they've considered already, because usually they're kind of boiling it down to a few different options and kind of want to hear what other customers have seen and what other customers have done with those different architecture choices. So we usually discuss a few different options. I often have to go talk to specialists who have spent a lot of time doing that. And then we'll usually have a nice collaborative session where we kind of whiteboard some architecture and talk through a few different options.
Right. So we got a question in the chat about how the customers actually, what they use, how they use the product. So can you maybe show us some example, Chris, on, you briefly showed us the UI. Are you able to show us again? If we can bring up your screen share.
Yep, let me get the I can get the product right back on the screen for you real quick. And just give me one quick second. Of course, live demos are required. I am required to re-sign in. I have been logged out. I will, of course, have to two-factor again.
We're just doing this to show that this is live. So
yes. This is very authentic. This is about as authentic as it gets. Sure, I could just do a really quick run through here. So this is the ALTR product. Let me know if you need me to zoom in. I know there was some.
We need you to start the screen share first.
Yep. So Let me know if you need to zoom in. I know that there was some issue with the screen resolution earlier.
Maybe 1 or 2 steps.
Sure.
Probably helpful.
So the ALTR product really starts with adding data to ALTR. And then once you add data, you can group your data together. This is really the beginning of policy. You can take your groups of data, you can take your groups of people, and you say, hey, these people are allowed to access this data. But the great thing is it doesn't stop at just one data source. You can use this as your single control plane for all of your data access. So if it's a MySQL database and a Snowflake, or an MS SQL database and a Redshift, and you've got ETL jobs between them, you're able to control the data access to all of those kind of disparate data sources from your single pane of glass here. And so that's what we're seeing here is the ability to control that. And then also you can create policy, consumption policy around that. So that, if it's a data science use case or something like that, and the data scientist really only needs to see 1,000 records to test his model before we, put it out into a production system, or, something along those lines. Consumption-based policy is something we're seeing as increased importance. You have the ability to do that as well.
And those sources that you're working with, how does that connection to those work? Are there can you basically use any type of source? If you mentioned SQL databases, for instance.
Yep. So there's a number of integration methods, everything from JDBC drivers to a proxy to the cloud integration, like we've been talking about. And they span from MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, Aurora, Postgres. And I feel like I'm forgetting some, but most of the transactional and a lot of the analytical databases, they're included in our footprint of coverage for data sources.
And you also mentioned this something around the customer profiles, for instance, in finance. But can you perhaps expand a bit on that as well, on what are the customers you're trying to attract with this product? Any other specific industries, for instance, who this is beneficial for?
Right. So I would say that the number of industries where this is beneficial is growing, not shrinking. There's all sorts of ways that your organization is increasing, or maybe unknowingly increasing its risk profile by having data stored and in its control. And so, the market for that is not going away anytime soon. Regulations change every single day. In the banking space, that's kind of, we're very fortunate to get our start there. There's all sorts of regulation and control there, and there's just an immense amount of risk. The data in banking use cases is extremely, extremely valuable. And so there's always going to be a need to figure out how we can make that data inaccessible to bad actors, and also make sure that the people who have access to the data have the right access to data. Sometimes those problems are viewed differently. Sometimes those problems are viewed as the same. But you can really use ALTR to establish a solution there.
Yeah, and regulated industries usually means a lot of compliance and frameworks and things like that. So I'm guessing those are things that you work quite a lot with as well, then.
Correct. Yes.
And
one thing you probably saw on the bottom of one of my slides is we undergo the task every year of assessing ourselves and being assessed by assessors for PCI, level 1 PCI compliance, SOC 2 type 2,
right.
HIPAA attestations. We're very, very, very familiar with all of those operational requirements, and we translate all of those requirements into, all of those operational kind of requirements into our product pretty much from day one. Those requirements can drive product requirements. with our product team. But they also drive operational requirements with, how we deliver the software, how we package the software, how we even develop the software, code reviews, things like that. And then also just, keeping the software operating at steady state, how we react to incidents, disaster recovery. And so we've got we've accrued a little bit of a pedigree and kind of that operational knowledge. Again, going back to SaaS, because we are SaaS, and again, we're a small team, we couldn't operate hundreds of disparate instances of our product. It just would not work for us, especially given all of those operational guarantees that we have to give, the SOC 2 and the PCI. We operate one product. We effectively have one production environment for all of our SaaS customers. And so just the ability to do that on SaaS with AWS is what's really allowed us to do that with our team.
Can you maybe give some examples of the controls that you've evolved that other SaaS providers could benefit from?
So within our teams, we've got a really robust kind of incident response policy. For example, this is one that I work on quite often. When we have a incident, we try not to, but software is definitely imperfect, and there's also environmental factors that go into incidents. We could have a very low severity incident, like S3 is having an intermittent failure, which does happen. I know we're on an AWS show here, but it's happened occasionally. Just being able to be reactive to that, both in the software and also operationally, and making controls for yourself so that you can pivot away when services are unavailable. Just taking those types of consideration into your product design really only benefits you as a product, as an organization, and as a service.
And I suppose building on that serverless architecture that you showed us and talked a bit about, that also helps you in the way that you operate this solution with excellence as well, in terms of incident response and so on as well.
Correct. Yep. And so incident response is also just one example, but yes, 100%.
So getting a question from a side channel here, you mentioned PCI Level 1, which might be a bit unusual. Can you tell us a bit about why they need that?
Yep. So, PCI, one of the biggest use cases for PCI is obviously in e-commerce. And typically, those are when you see somebody, you go to an e-commerce website, and they've got the little PCI logo at the bottom. That's typically a self-attestation, and that's basically them saying, "Hey, we all agree that we're not going to mishandle your credit card information, and we've got these controls in place to say that we're not going to mishandle your credit card information." And for the small, $1 to $10 million per year e-commerce company, that's generally just fine. And that works for them because their business doesn't require anything else. And usually they're using something like, Stripe to make sure that they don't have any risk anyways. So they can very easily provide that attestation. What if you're the tokenization provider and the data protection provider and the data control provider for the bank itself, or a banking technology provider? The requirements are just a little bit different than somebody with a Shopify store. There is piles and piles of data there that has to be protected, and it has to be protected with explicit control. And so the requirements between the level 1 PCI and the lower levels, they are extremely different. And the level of scrutiny to achieve that certification is extremely different. And that's because the use case, when you're on the banking technology side, not just the kind of the consumer commercial side, when you're on the banking technology side, the use case is massively different. And so that's what drives those higher levels of requirement.
And are those requirements from your customers then, and you implement those, or is it more on a proactive approach, making sure to have those in place before customers really need them?
So I would say in the beginning when we first, and this is just some founder honesty for you. In the beginning, when we first brought the product to market, the customer came to us and said, "Hey, we really like this, but we need this, and we need to go live in 45 days." And so I think if you were to talk to a PCI assessor or QSA, I think it's extremely rare to get the level 1 PCI certification in 45 days. But due to some of the investments that we've made as a team, more specifically, our DevOps team, I give a shout out to Kevin. I literally just saw him walk by my office. Because we made those investments, we were able to achieve that level of certification. And again, going back to the SaaS thing, we wouldn't be able to do that without SaaS. SaaS affords us the ability to say with abject and objective reality, this is exactly what's happening to your data. Gone are the days of going to the data center to inspect, where an Ethernet cable comes out of a switch and where it gets plugged into and what network interface and what rack and which you in the rack and all that. Those days are gone. We can basically just give you a blueprint of our entire application and say, objectively speaking, because it's software and the infrastructure is the code, this is what happens to your data.
Right. And then the cloud provider has those frameworks and certifications in place as well, of course. So I like this founder talk. So a question then, if you were to talk to another startup founder, how early on would you say that they should start looking at compliance questions? Is that something to start with straight away, basically?
I would say I would always keep an eye on who your customer is going to be. And if they're in a highly compliant scenario and they're in a highly compliant business, I would say it's going to affect you 100%.
Right. So this is Building SaaS on AWS. I'm Gunnar Grosch. I'm joined today by Chris from ALTR, my colleague David here from AWS. And we've looked at ALTR, their product, looked at how they're building SaaS on AWS. And Chris, I believe you have some final information to show us to learn more about ALTR, right?
Sure. Yep.
Putting you on the spot now. But...
No worries. So to learn more about ALTR, there's a couple of different ways that you can learn more about us and our product. You can sign up for free on our website. Again, getting back to kind of the kernel of why we started this conversation was the ability to offer prospective customers and customers the ability to become a customer very easily. So ALTR.com, you can't miss it. It's right there. It's in the top third of the website. You can become a customer within 2 minutes time. Social media, we'd love to see you on social media. And there's no better way to get the product, to get to know the product better than to come work for us. We're hiring for almost every single facet of the company. Engineering is hiring for almost every seat in the building. ALTR.com/careers. You can learn a lot about, the way that we view our company values. And then if it's interesting to you, go ahead and click one of the recs and send us your resume. We'd love to take a look.
That's great. There are two things that all of our guests have in common. One is that they're building SaaS on AWS. The other one is that they're hiring. So if you want to work in an exciting SaaS space, do check out careers at ALTR for sure. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I want to thank Chris for joining today and David for joining as well. I know it's really early for you in Seattle, David. It looks like it's late on the screen right now. It's getting darker for you. But thank you both for joining. Thanks for all the viewers for tuning in to this stream. And I will see you again in 2 weeks for the next episode of Building SaaS on AWS. So finally, thank you, Chris. Thank you, David.
Thanks, everyone.